Hello everyone, my name is Varun and I'm a software engineer at Razorpay. And today we are going to discuss about introduction to web application architecture and how is it going and some like scratch the surface of the thing. So moving to the first question, that what exactly is software architecture? You must have heard name of this term software architecture or software design or something of this sort. Why do this matter and why do people or why do companies spend a lot of time on discussing about this thing, and why is this prioritized so much? So let's begin with understanding each and every pointer. Let's first of all understand what is architecture. I hope that you would have guessed it by the name itself. Architecture is something like a blueprint of how your application is organized, or maybe how your software is organized, how different components, I would like to give an example or say something about this is that when we are building something on our local project, local system, or maybe a small side project or a college project, we are mostly working or creating only a single server rather than, but in the real real world challenges are very different, and there are multiple components to it. There are multiple services. For example, if we take a payments thing, let's say I want to expose a payment functionality. This seems to be a very simple problem statement at once, but there will be one service which is actually involved in the payment processing, another will be involved in sending the OTP, SMS, email, and all those things. There can be third which is going to be for refunds, there can be fourth for complaints, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple components when it comes to uh, real world application, right? That is why it is very important that we are very focused, and we have consciously decided upon what all components will be there and how are they going to interact. There should be some kind of consistency so that we can reduce the manual effort and all those things. Second thing is how data flows into the system. This is also very important. You know that data is the oil of the modern world, and we want to preserve each and every data because it is very important. Every request which comes to us should be stored and it should be served with delight, right? That is what is the purpose of a very good software. How does the system handle the growth and traffic? This is the ultimate goal, that one day we need to be ready. We cannot be the one who is going to scale or who is going to think about how to handle the growth and traffic. Today if you see, there are some real world use cases. For example, let's say Flipkart. Right now the traffic can be very less on that website, but if they are going for a sale, let's say a big billion days kind of sale or something, the traffic is going to be multifold. Matlab, it can be anything. We need to be ready from day one, that it do not takes a lot of effort when we are approaching to the events, or maybe at times we may not have thought that this is going to be the scale, but we might encounter that scale. So that is also something which we need to keep into the consideration. Now coming to the layers of the web application. Before we move on, okay, I'll move on, and these are few of the core layers of the application, and you can find the definition and everything on about this thing, and I'm very sure that you would have a basic idea of few of the things as well. But just in case, just for the folks who are starting with the basics, I would like to present this in a kind of story which is there for a completely newbie or a person who is not very much into the software engineering and all those things, right? So let's say the problem statement is very simple. You went to a restaurant and you wanted to order something, right? What is going to be the process? You're going to have, you are the person who wants to order something, right? You have a requirement, then there will be a waiter who is actually coming and taking your order. Then he'll take that order from you and he'll pass on that order to the backend or the kitchen, I would say, to the chef in the kitchen. And then chef is going to be the one who is actually going to do all the processing, add all the spices, salt, and everything, and will ultimately hand it back to the waiter saying that, hey, here's what I have prepared, please serve it back. And then that is going to come back to you. And in the meanwhile, we are also maybe mentioning it at the reception desk or any person that, hey, on this particular, for this particular client, this is the order, please note this down. Now I would like to take you through this so that you are easily able to understand. As you know that you were the one who was ordering food on in that restaurant, so you are actually the client. In case of web applications or anything, client is the one who is actually requesting for something online, right? For example, I'll give you the example. Your client can be your web browser. When you have opened some website or something, you are asking that, hey, can you please show me how does google.com looks like. Second thing can be maybe your desktop application or maybe your mobile application. Again, you are asking for some functionality to work, right? So that though those things, your web application, your mobile application, your desktop applications, are going to act like a client. There is one more example. In case, I'm very sure you must have heard the name of Postman and you would have used it. That is another client for testing and all those things which we all use. Now coming to the API. API is just like the API full form of API is the application programming interface. It's an interface for client and backend, right, to interact with each other. This is actually acting as a waiter, which is taking the request from the client and taking it back uh, to the backend server where actually the logic resides, right? And then and at the backend, when backend is doing all the business logic and everything, each and everything is done by backend returns a response to the API, and then API brings that response back to the client. And you definitely know about the database. Backend is connected to the database, and it is giving some kind of it is doing some kind of CRUD operations and all those things whatsoever we want it to do. Moving to the next slide, this is actually a typical architecture of how does the data or how does the flow look like. Client uses the API to hit the backend, which actually contains the business logic. Business logic is run inside the backend servers. Then backend server is having connectivity to the database, and then after doing all the operations or something on the database, we are returning back the response. Coming to the question which we started with, why does the architecture matters? Yeah, right, we already discussed this, that our application can start getting thousands or even millions of users at any given point. And definitely we are all aware that a single server cannot handle all the requests, right? So we need to introduce some components and all those things. Don't worry if you did not get last two pointers, I have prepared next slides for deep diving into all these things, right? Before moving to the components, I would first of all like to come to this particular slide. What we discussed here is that we are imagining that our application is going, the traffic is increasing and we need to scale our system. There's the typical problem statement which we often hear. So first of all, let's understand about what is scaling and what are the kinds of scaling. First thing which I want to discuss here before we move on to the aspect of scaling is that please try to understand that whenever there is a request which is coming to your backend servers or any server, whenever there is a request on that server, each and every request actually consumes some amount of RAM and CPU, right? Your server is also a machine which is having its own memory and CPU, right? And every request is consuming some CPU, some RAM. So let's assume that your server is right now a very simple server and it's having 4 gigs of memory and maybe 4 cores of CPU. And now every request is being served through it, but now number of requests coming to that server has crossed the threshold for the resources which the server have. The RAM is now insufficient to handle all those traffics, or the CPU is insufficient. Now we need to scale the system in order to serve all the requests delightfully, right? We do not want any request to fail. That is our prime objective of a robust software or a application, right? Now coming to the point about scaling. Scaling is of two type, as I discussed with you right now, that there is already one server and it is having 4 gigs of memory, 4 gigs of 4 cores of CPU. Now your traffic has crossed the threshold, you want to scale it. What you can do is you can go and increase the memory limits. You can say, okay, I'll add 4 more gigs of memory and I'll add 4 more cores of the CPU. So now the capacity of that server is, or the resources of that server is 8 cores of memory and 8 cores of CPU, right? This is one of the pattern, and this is known as horizontal. Like horizontal is, if you try to visualize, horizontal in itself is stacking each thing on top of other, right? So you are adding some resources or layer of resources on the existing server. That is a typical example of horizontal scaling. Now coming to the vertical scaling, what vertical scaling does is that instead of adding more resources to single server, what it is doing, it is increasing the number of servers. Why? one of the primary reason which I would say, which will be easy for you to relate, is that in the horizontal scaling, let's say you have only one server. If something bad happens to that one server, your entire system is down. But in case of vertical scalings, you have multiple servers which are running same application, right? Just in case one server is is having some obstacles or is facing some troubles, your rest of the servers can still be there and they can serve the traffic smoothly. This is what is vertical scaling. Like vertical is in the landscape manner, right? So you can understand having multiple servers of same application logic which is running. Now coming to the point of component, now I'll be able to make you explain easily about load balancer. So we discussed that in vertical scaling, we are having multiple servers or multiple containers or multiple pods, right? All are, consider all of these as the same term for right now. If you're not very aware of what container is or what a Kubernetes pod is, let's not go there. We want to make sure one thing, that okay, now I have 5 different servers running with the same application logic. How should I manage that each and every request or each and every server is getting the request uniformly? If I have 5 servers but the request is reaching only and only to one particular server, that's not a good thing. That is again the case of horizontal scaling part only, right? That is the place where load balancer comes into the picture. This is the component which is actually responsible for distributing the traffic or the load onto different servers available. And load balancer also keeps on checking that whether my server is up or healthy or not, whether is it ready to take the traffic or not. Just in case if something goes wrong with one of the server, and let's say we are redirecting 10% of the traffic, and 10% of the traffic is getting some internal server error, then it's not right? Then it's not correct. We are not bringing delight to our clients. That is not what we want when we want to build a good software. Coming to the point, second one is caching. Why do we need caching? As I already mentioned that in most of the projects which you would have built as your side projects or maybe as your college projects, you would have created or you would have integrated a database, right? In case you have not, you will have to integrate, because in the real world scenario there's hardly any service or there's hardly any logic where you do not need any database of you, any database. Each and every service, mostly services, needs database for their use case. And now try to understand, let's take an example of maybe one social media platform. So in a social media platform, I remember there was a celebrity who uploaded some kind of post or something, and in within 1 hour there were some 10 million or some likes or maybe something on that particular post, right? So you can assume one thing. Now what is happening if we discuss on this fact that okay, I want to create this like functionality for my social media application. One of the thing would be that okay, let's create a database, and in that we will keep on increasing the likes for that particular post. That sounds simple, but what if there is a lot of traffic? When there are 10 million requests coming, and for each request you are going and making an entry or updating that entry into the database, that is really costly. Your database may go down. If you're not able to relate, then try to understand. Maybe let's say Virat Kohli uploads something tomorrow and we all want to see that post or something of that sort, right? Now retrieving same particular thing from database is very difficult, or it is not actually difficult, it is a bottleneck which the database is going to face again, and it can bring the database down. The actual database may come down. So that is the place where caching comes into the picture. And to quote this, I will take the example of a very commonly used cache database, which is actually Redis. We store details about the most fetched component or something in that Redis, and whenever the request is coming, we check that if it already exists in the Redis or in a cache, let's return this back rather than actually hitting the database. Make sense? This is like one more fundamental example which I would like to give here is, let's say there is a website or something, and in that website, most of the on the home page, most of the things are static. Those images are static, and a lot of diagrams and figures are static, which will not change with time, or at least I would say with in near future. Now instead of bringing all these details over the network, this will lead to increase in network latency. More data needs to travel, and the latency, we already discussed, the latency is going to increase. So instead of that, why can't we cache all these images and everything on some close CDN? We call it a CDN, but consider it as a, why can't we cache all these things? Whenever there is a request which is coming, let's fetch all these details once we have kept it when we have kept it in cache, and let all the devices ask it from the cache itself, rather than the request taking all the long path. So this is one of the thing which is really important component of the architecture, and all those things. And I hope that you must have seen that diagram where we are having that, okay, here's the user, then the request comes to this server, then the entry is made to this database, then another service call happens to this particular API endpoint to run some kind of logic. Once that comes, we again do some pre-processing. So that is the basic design which we build to prepare the mental model before actually jumping on to the real implementation, so that we do not have to face the bottlenecks once our application is ready and we are serving some traffic, right? So now I would like to conclude this talk by telling about how, or by giving you some real glimpse about how does the real engineering world problems look like. And so that's what I wanted to put here, so that you are able to relate. In most of the college project, most of the applications run on the single machine with very few users. Please don't get offended. I understand that if you are someone who would have taken one more step ahead, that okay, I have deployed this on my custom virtual machine living in the cloud, or maybe some SaaS service for this, maybe render, Verser, and all those services which helps you deploy your servers on their websites, and then you can consume it. That's correct. But you definitely know that they are also having very limited resources or something in the free tier at least, and you know that your website or your application does not receive a lot of traffic, or maybe a lot of concurrent traffic, right? But in the real worlds, the systems needs to be designed so that they can handle the scale, that there are multiple requests which are coming we need to gracefully handle errors, that just in case error is happening, we are making sure that there is no edge case which can create trouble. So let's take an example of payments. It's a very sensitive uh, sector to be, right? In just in case your payment failed, or maybe it shows that your payment failed, but what if the money was deducted from your bank account, right? It's going to lead to instant panic. All those things are really important, just in case things don't go wrong, but still you need to prepare for them and make sure that the end user is not getting impacted. And definitely one most important thing, there are a large amount of data. We do not understand until and unless we have actually seen the numbers, or something in the real companies, but the amount is massive. The amount of data is massive, and we need to think about databases and all those things upfront. How are we going to handle this large amount of the data? So that is what I want to mention here, is that software engineering is not only just about writing code. It's about designing the systems that are scalable, reliable, and efficient. Scalable means ability to hold a lot of data. Second, reliability, which actually means they are able to handle the situations just in case something goes wrong. They're able to recover from it, and they are not returning back something chaotic. That is what is the plan. And efficient is definitely we are not wasting some kind of resources just for the sake of returning the response and all those things, right? And in the bottom line, I would like to conclude this session with understanding architecture helps engineers build better software rather than messy things, right? And with this, I would like to conclude this talk, and thank you very much.